Welcome to the Hunting News Podcast. I'm your host, Steven Ziegler. I'm here with my co-host, Aaron Futrell. And today, we are going to be talking about politics. A lot of people, we had some, obviously, with the Trump assassination attempt. It was all over. We posted a few things about it, and we had people going, oh, hey, why are you talking about politics on here? This is a hunting page. This is a hunting page. I got this. Here's the thing. We talk about politics because our one page, which you actually started, was the Sportsman Party. And it's literally, what's the picture on there?
It is kind of like the whole, Democrat donkey, Republican elephant, but it's a deer kind of done up the same kind of American red, white, and blue motif. So it's kind of a play on that, and it's kind of like a political thing. And our other one of our other pages is the Hunting News. So they're both kind of semi-political in nature.
Yes,
even though we use them
a
a lot for memes and having fun right now, but they started as semi-news and political pages in nature. So yeah, we do
talk about politics, but we talk about politics not in the sense of Republican, Democrat, but more of public lands policies, hunting policies, fishing policies. We talk about, for example, what we're going to be talking about today is, I've said this for a while, that I think that Donald Trump is the best public lands president since Teddy Roosevelt was president. Oh, yeah. Now, we'll get into FDR and some other things and what Donald Trump did.
Not FDR, wrong Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt.
No, Teddy Roosevelt. FDR was good on public lands, too.
Okay.
I'm saying we're going to talk about FDR. Yeah, sorry, I should probably make sure I split up the Roosevelts here. You have Teddy Roosevelt, greatest president of all time on public lands. We carved his face on a mountain. Okay. Yeah. Also got shot while campaigning and had the most badass, honestly, better moment than Trump. When you look back at it, like Trump stuck his fist up in the air. Like, that's an iconic picture. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt got shot and then walked on stage and was like, hey, you guys might have heard I just got shot. It's going to take more than a bullet to take down this bull moose. And the whole place went nuts and stuff. Like,
and then spoke for an hour.
He spoke for an hour. He had to get like, oh man, I read the Bully Pulpit years ago, but I believe he had like a bunch of people give him like handkerchiefs and just shoved them up against his chest and like packed it in there and was like, all right, I'm giving my speech. And actually, after he left that speech, like he was just going to keep campaigning until his wife found him. They like called his wife, and then his wife got a hold of him and was like, no, you're going to the hospital. It was the only person that got him to go to the hospital was his wife. He could have died. Like, he really could have died. And he was like, no, I'm going to keep going. That was a tough dude. And he was the best. He's hands down the best public lands president in history. We're going to talk about Trump and what he did. And is he number 2 or number 3, I think, is the only debate that really we have when it comes to public lands and presidencies. I've read about every president when it comes to public lands. I've researched everyone. I'm putting Trump at number 2.
Even James Buchanan?
He didn't do anything. He just died right away. Like,
no, he did. He was nabbed James Buchanan. That was William Henry Harrison.
Henry Harrison. I thought you were going to bring up William Henry Harrison. He died like from getting sick during his inauguration speech.
That's why he's my favorite president. He didn't do anything to screw up the country.
Yeah. So I've done an extensive dive, and I did this years ago, but with all the politics going on right now, I figured it'd be a good time to talk about politics and how it relates to hunting, fishing, and public lands. 3 separate things, 3 separate discussions, but they all kind of go together.
Yeah, it was like a big Venn diagram. They all
yeah, and I love Venn diagrams, like Kamala Harris, right? She's always saying that. She's like, anytime I have a problem, I get a Venn diagram. Like, okay.
Oh,
good luck. Good luck with that. We're just a couple of idiots that have read some books. She's vice president. But anyways,
I could do that.
Yeah, I feel like I could. So with public lands and Donald Trump, we're going to get what did Donald Trump do? He had 2 major public lands bills that are huge for public lands. Huge. The Great American Outdoor Act. It's the one that people talk about the most. It's the single largest funding bill for public lands in history. That's the second best bill. And it was basically a spending bill. How they generated the money is a little confusing because when you dive into these bills, like I read the bill, it's very hard to like read the bill and then understand what they're really doing with it, right? Because it doesn't give you all the details. They kind of just make stuff up after they pass these bills. And like, oh yeah, we can do that because of this other precedent. So it's very hard to understand where the money comes from. With the most important one was the John Dingell Jr. was it the Land Water Conservation Act? I believe something like that. Yes, I have it pulled up here on the screen, but either way, it's the LWCF funding was a bill that was passed in like the 60s, right? It was that was the Land Water and Conservation Act, LWCF. Conservation Fund, not Act, sorry. So that was passed, and basically what it did is it took money from offshore drilling, because offshore is public lands, and then they get royalties. So if you own property, like my parents own property, so my mom every month gets a check for royalties from the oil they pull off the land on her property. Same thing happens with offshore drilling. But that money, because public lands are not owned by the government, they're owned by us. So here's one thing that Republicans get wrong. Like, I hear this all the time. I used to hear it a lot. It'd be like, oh, we got to get rid of, sell the public lands. Well, public lands aren't government lands. They're public. I own them. Anybody listening here owns them. We own the lands. So the idea that you should just be allowed to sell my property, screw you. No, that's my property, not your property.
Yeah, the government manages them in trusts. So you kind of got to think about it that way.
Yeah.
So it's like the government doesn't own them. They control them in like a trust. Like it's kind of like a legal thing. It's like,
Yeah.
So they take care of them for us, and they manage them, but that we own them.
And they don't do a very good job a lot of times. Like, the government does not do a good job at most things. So like, they screw these things up all the time.
Yeah.
But what happened with the LWCF was it took that money and said, no, this money goes back into public lands. Here's the problem. It was passed in 10-year increments. So every 10 years they had to renew it. Now, if you go through history, I'm not going to get into all of the different political debates because you have to go into daily politics from the 70s, 80s. It's all over the place. But if you sum it up, Republicans and Democrats both used this fund as a political football. If the Democrats were in charge, they'd be like, oh, we have to re-sign it. And the Republicans would be like, I'm not going to sign that unless you give me something. And then when the Republicans were in control, they're like, this is a great bill. We have to re-sign it. And the Democrats would be like, we'll sign it, but you got to give us something. Because they didn't want to go down as the ones that just let it expire, because everybody loves this bill. It's a very popular bill. Public lands are the easiest things to get passed because people love public lands. It's just, it's an 80-20 issue in this country.
Yeah.
Maybe 90-10 issue in this country. Most people agree public lands, big thumbs up. We all like them.
Yeah,
Pretty simple.
Like national parks, libraries,
Yeah.
taking care of veterans. It's like people they like.
Yeah,
The good
it's
people.
pretty easy.
Yeah.
So both sides used it as a political football to get what they wanted. It was a negotiation chip. That's all it was. Trump came in and he signed this new bill, John Dingell Jr. Land Conservation, whatever this act was. I always mix it up. It's not restoration. I always want it. Yeah, if you scroll to the top, you'll be able to see exactly what this bill is called. It's 47, the John D. Dingell Jr. Conservation, Management, and Restoration Act. It was formerly known as the National Resources Management Act. Okay, so basically it took that fund, the LWCF fund, and put it into place in perpetuity. So people can't use it as a political football. Hey, Americans all agree royalties from this should go back into public lands. Now, here's why I put Trump ahead of FDR on the public lands, is because of this issue right here. My thinking growing up, my first election I voted in was 2008. So it was like, Obama era, from the Bush era. So like that tell you my age. I'm 36. So I looked at this issue, and as we started getting involved and as I started reading and researching this, my opinion was Republicans want to drill too much, but if you drill too much and you pull resources from public lands, that's going to help the economy. It's going to help our day-to-day lives. That's a good thing, but you're going to have an impact on the environment, which is a bad thing. And then the Democrats want to have too many restrictions, which is going to help the public lands and help our land and water, but it's going to hurt our day-to-day lives because gas is going to be more expensive. Raw materials for cars are going to be more expensive, so prices will go up. So I always looked at this like, okay, well, the two-party system actually works here, right? It's a yin and a yang situation. Okay, it goes a little too far this way, then it swings back this way, and back and forth, and they're always arguing over it, but it's never an issue people really talk about. Trump came in and completely changed my thinking and thinking about public lands in general. Instead of fighting back and forth, Republicans and Democrats doing their obnoxious thing where they just yell at each other over and over, even though we already know what's going to happen. What he did was say, no. We're going to pull money from drilling, which is going to help the economy and hurt public lands. and we're going to take that money and we're going to put it back into the public lands forever. And he did this through a couple of different bills, and we'll get into that a little bit here. And so what it did was it was a win-win situation. He's a business owner. He was thinking win-win. We're going to take the money that we get and we're going to reinvest it into public lands. Well, of course, we should be pulling resources to help our lives get better and then taking all of that money and just putting it back into public lands to make the public lands better. Like I said, after he passed this one, I believe in 2019, I think, is when he passed the great. Look up the Great American Outdoor Act in a separate screen. Look up the Great American Outdoor Act. I think that was 2019. It was towards the end of his presidency. But he and that was basically a giant funding bill that seems, from as far as I could, it's right there. Yeah, it's not a very long bill. I think it was like only 4 or 5 pages.
Which is very short.
Dude, the John Dingell Jr. bill was way longer.
Huge.
It was, it took me forever to read that thing. I don't know what year it was, but I'm pretty sure it was 2019. It was, Trump signed it. It was great. He did his thing with it, how great and awesome it was. Oh, it was passed in 2020. Yeah. I knew it was towards the end of his presidency. It took $1.3 billion per year for 5 years to make significant enforcement in national parks. Basically, they took billions and billions of dollars and they're revamping national parks. I'm good with that because it seems that this money is also coming from a lot of the money coming out of the national parks is how it appeared, but it was also very vague. But I know the LWCF funding, and look, we should have more of this. I think that the Republicans should run on, hey, we're going to pull resources. We're going to get gas prices down. We're going to get raw materials down for, rubber and plastic. We own DeLong Lures. We make plastic worms, right? So if you get prices of plastic worms down, it makes fishing lures cheaper. It makes cars cheaper. It makes gas cheaper. It makes our lives better if you pull resources, and then take all those royalty monies and put them back into public lands to making them better. I think that the reason they don't talk about it more is because most people aren't like us and make actual political decisions based on public lands. So that's kind of the main thing that when he did that and he changed the thinking on public lands and public land funding and how we do it. When Donald Trump did that, that's what puts him at number 2 for me. Now, there's a couple other things in this bill that are really good. One is the open until closed part of this. Okay, so if you think about it in terms of when you're going out hunting, there's certain states that have laws for hunting where it's, hey, you're only allowed to do the things that are in this law book. There's other states that are like, hey, you can do whatever you want, but here's the things you're not allowed to do. So with public lands, it was very similar. It was like, hey, you can't go on public lands unless we tell you can go on public lands. Yeah. Trump changed that in this bill by saying, hey, listen, all public lands are open. These are your lands. You own them.
Yeah.
Go on them unless we have a sign there, and we go through Congress. The Interior.
Department of the Interior.
Department of the Interior.
Or the Bureau of Land Management.
Yes, unless they come out and say, hey, there's a reason you can't be here. Yeah. Okay, so the onus now went from, hey, I'm not allowed on my property unless you tell me I am. I'm not allowed on these public lands unless you give me permission to. No, you're allowed to go wherever you want unless we have a reason here. And that was a good thing because it opened up millions of acres of public land to us. It opened up a lot. Through his whole presidency, it was over 4 million acres of public land he opened up. Another reason why he's one of the top guys. It was the most land opened up by anybody since Teddy Roosevelt was Trump. As far I'm pretty sure about that. I'm pretty sure he's number 2 after Teddy Roosevelt because Teddy Roosevelt was hundreds of millions of acres. But he opened up stuff that was landlocked. He did a bunch of stuff for public lands. Also in this bill, it basically took federal hunting laws and state hunting laws and basically gave more power to the states to say, hey, you guys are the scientists in this area. You're the game wardens. You're the biologists. You're making the laws. The federal laws are going to more accurately represent your individual state laws because you guys know what's going on your public land in your state, and you should have more control over it. Which, again, follow the science. You hear that from the left a lot, but hey, look, this was a good thing. Now, I do want to get into the political thing and bring you into this part because this is something that you saw when I wrote this article, and 100,000 people read the article I wrote about this bill. Now, When I wrote the bill, this is very interesting about how
You wrote the bill?
I wrote the bill. Yes,
wrote the
yeah.
article about
I wrote
the
the
bill.
article about the bill. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. It takes you forever to just read through and then like look up definitions. It's a pain to read these things.
Oh,
They
yeah.
intentionally make them complicated. But anyways, I wrote this, and it was like a no-brainer. Like everybody agrees on it. It was every single Democrat in the House and the Senate voted for this bill. Every Republican in the Senate voted for the bill, and there was like 2 Republicans in the House that voted against it. But it was something to do with, it seems like it was, I don't agree with it. It was something like their state and their district was going to be opened up for public lands, and it was going to make some people mad. Whatever. It was, I think 2 people between the House and the Senate did not vote for this bill. Everyone else voted. This was not just bipartisan where they're like, hey, we got 50 Democrats and 1 Republican. It's bipartisan. Like, no, it's really not. This was truly bipartisan.
Super bipartisan.
Super bipartisan. Everybody agreed. Everybody in the country agreed. Super popular. We all finally got something where it's like, hey, you work together. You did the right thing. We all agree. You all agree. Good job. But the left couldn't hand Donald Trump that easy of a victory, right? So they had to have something orange man bad. And this is where I kind of learned the little tricks where they used to talk about fake news. Now it's disinformation, or now it's cheap fakes, whatever. They're always changing the terms, but it's always the same. They would say, they put out an article that said that this bill was just to help Trump's buddies be able to drill more. Okay. So I reread the bill again, couldn't find anything in there about it. They cited an article, followed the article. That article had a quote from a congressman from Colorado. I forget the guy's name, but he was a congressman from Colorado. I called him up, and this is so silly, but we were running the huntingnews.com.
Yeah.
I've said this before. We are very knowledgeable on this topic, but I'm a nobody when it comes to like a congressman. So I called the congressman's office and said, hey, I'm getting ready to run this article. You are quoted by, I don't want to say who it was because I can't remember if it was Yahoo or CNN or something like that. It was a major news network, quoted him as saying, oh, he said that this is just to help Trump make millions and millions of dollars. And I kept getting in the comment section, you kept seeing this article posted over and over and over and over. Oh, this is just Trump trying to help his rich buddies. This is just Trump trying to do his rich buddies. So I called the congressman's office, talked to his secretary. I said, hey, I'm getting ready to write this article. He's quoted in it. I want to make sure before I run this article that I give you a chance to respond. And she's like, oh, no. She starts freaking out, and then she's like, let me call you back. Then somebody else calls me back, and they're like, well, we can't follow all of these articles, and we're not saying he didn't say that, but we're not giving any statements. We can't chase down all of the fake news that's written about us. It's not on us. I'm like, that's fine. And she was like, so which news organization are you with? And I'm like, the huntingnews.com. She's like, wait, what? I was like the huntingnews.com, and we're going to be running this article about this. And she was like, okay, bye. And like hung up on me. And I was like, oh, she realized that I'm just this like dumbass kid with a computer. but I was doing real research on this. And nobody ever said that. Nobody complained about the bill, but they always put these little things out there. And I realized at that moment, unless you go back and read the bill for yourself, it's real hard to know what's real and what's not real. If you're on the left, you see that article and go, oh, of course Trump did the bad thing. If you're on the right, you read the article and go, oh, of course Trump did the right thing. Like people are so partisan, but who had time to do what I did, where I actually read the bill?
Oh, yeah.
I read the bill multiple times. I did my research. I followed the links. The links end up going to you have to put in your credit card to actually read the article websites, right? Like, I'm not shoving my credit card information to these random, websites probably run by Russia. Probably. Like,
oh, yeah.
They're going to steal my card information or something. But nobody has time to track that stuff down. So when it comes to hunting and fishing and public land stuff, that's why I wanted to bring this up and talk about it now, because I think that we do have some credibility, because we read any public lands bill that comes up. We read it over and over and over, and we understand it. And that's something that I want people to know, that we will do the actual research. We're not afraid to criticize the left or the right. We've done this for years. We've written articles that were pro-Republican and then against Republicans, pro-Democrat and against Democrats, depending on when it was and what the article was. So our analysis of public lands, hunting, fishing, we don't have... Now, look, Democrats are generally bad on hunting. Republicans tend to be better or tend to not be as good on public lands, other than Trump kind of has changed that.
Yeah.
But, they both do good and bad. And we're going to report on them both ways as we see it, as it relates to a hunter, as somebody who likes public lands. We're going to report on it based on that perspective and that perspective alone. The people listening to this, you can make your own decisions. You say, oh, well, I'm not going to vote on a public lands issue. I don't care what Trump did. Fine. That's fair.
Oh, yeah.
But we're going to inform, and we're going to be primary sources. We read the actual bill. How many bills has anybody that's listening to this read? Until I started doing this, I've never read any actual bill other than hunting, fishing, public lands, and guns bills that we've written about.
Besides your electric bill, like what bill have you read?
I don't even read that. It's
like, I guess that's what I'm paying.
Yeah, right. I don't even check that in a long time. They could be screwing me over. I don't know.
I know, that's automatic pay right now.
Yeah, it is. It has been for years. But a couple other things that we'll get into the Great American Outdoor Act next, but open until closed. Every Kid Outdoor Act, it basically gives a bunch of money to help kids get outdoors, which
it's a great thing.
Yes, of course, everybody agrees. This was great. It allows sportsmen to carry unarmed bows across National Park Service land. Basically, so when you're hunting, this actually opened up a lot of land for hunters. Good job, Trump, for that. Big fan there.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I like hunting. I like public lands. But there's certain spots where you'd go like across National Park Service land. You can't carry a bow. This basically said if you don't have your bow armed, you're allowed to cross there to get to the public land where you are allowed to hunt. There was some gray areas where it was like, hey, you can't do this. And I mean, we ran into that at when we were hunting at Beach City, where you had public land and then you had like hunting land. It was like, hey, we had to call the game wardens. Hey, can we cross here? And it was a couple people. Like we talked to one guy and he was like, I don't know, but you can park on the other side. It's like, yeah, but I want to access it from this side because nobody else is. And it turns out they said that we could.
Yeah.
We could carry our muzzle loaders and everything across. They said it was okay, but
because
this clears that up.
Yeah, it was like the Army Corps of Engineers land.
Yeah.
It's like, can you cross this Army Corps of Engineers land that was kind of, the way it was worded is like, could you hunt here?
Yeah.
Maybe, but
we weren't sure. We weren't sure. We had to call and ask them. We asked a couple of people.
It's like, can you cross here with your guns? But we just made sure they were unloaded.
Yeah.
And then we loaded them when we got to the public land where we can hunt.
Yeah.
So we was like.
Yeah, but National Park Service land, you couldn't carry unloaded bows across, which I didn't know until I read this. But basically it said, hey, listen, if you're going to hunt on public land, you can carry a bow without the arrows in it. You can't just walk around like you're hunting.
Yeah, like,
but, I
don't know how many people actually do that.
I don't think.
With your compound bow with an arrow knocked.
But it made it easier on hunters.
Oh,
it was a good law. It helped hunters to be able to access public land. It helps me to get to my land. Imagine if like you have land that's landlocked and like you have an easement to get there, but they're like, hey man, you can't carry bows across there. You have to go in without a bow. Well, then I can't hunt. Mm-hmm. Like this is our land. This is public land. So this is a good part of this bill. Now this is where you get into the vague area of the bill where they basically just spend money willy-nilly. You see this in every bill I've read. Identifies opportunities for recreation, hunting, and fishing on federal lands. This will just be a bunch of wasted money.
That seems like a slush fund.
It's a slush fund, and then they're gonna.
I want to get hired to do that.
Right?
It's like, hey, I will go find Yeah, give me money to go find opportunities to hunt.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. Hey, listen. Hey, the hunting news. You know what? Here we go. You guys can fund the Hunting News podcast. You can sponsor us with this money. And then we'll tell everybody where they can go hunt. We'll teach them about your bill. That's what it sounds like to me.
No, it's like,
you just have to be connected politically to get that money.
Give me money and I will go find places that are good to hunt. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. It's vague. So this is up to the person who's in control of the money. So in these bills, and now that we're getting into politics a little bit, we're helping out Heidi Workman and stuff like that. Like we're getting involved in, because of the social media stuff, we're really good at that. So we're doing political events. We're starting to read more bills. I'm seeing these things. I'm like, oh, a lot of these bills are vague and put money into things that sound good. Like identify opportunities for recreation, hunting, and fishing.
Yeah, but some of this stuff actually did end up being good because it opened up a lot of the like wildlife refuges for more hunting and fishing opportunities through lottery systems. Like up north by Lake Erie, they added more.
Did that come from this bill?
I read a lot of the wildlife areas that it opened. It opened up a couple more hunts up north, up on Lake Erie.
Oh, really? I'll have to
Yeah.
So
I saw there was a whole list of wildlife refuges that had added hunting opportunities.
Okay.
And fishing opportunities where they weren't before.
So
And
like a lot of these bills, they have to have like certain accounting, things, and they have to be held accountable. I have read these, but we've been doing this for like 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
We've been reading these bills. I'm telling you, it is impossible to find where that money is.
Oh, yeah.
I do like we do this.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't find where that money goes.
Oh, yeah,
It's
it's
get on congress.gov. It is they don't show you things like it's hard to find the actual primary text of the bill to read for yourself. It's all political, it's all lawyer garbage, and it's very hard to understand.
Oh, yeah.
And then once it's passed, like a lot of these things have slush funds. This money could have been used really well. I don't actually know. It sounds like it probably was.
there's some of it is.
But-
I'm sure some of it is. I'm sure some of it
some
wasn't.
of it sure, some of it wasn't.
Yeah, I was in the Army. I know I know the Department of Defense, spends like a drunken sailor out there leaving stuff in Afghanistan.
Oh yeah, then you have some issues
And they
with
haven't
the president. but,
Yeah, they haven't passed they haven't passed an audit and since the Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah, we just do what we want.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a couple other this highlights Camp Nelson National Monument, but which is through the Antiquities Act. It basically designates public lands as national monuments, so you can't really do things on them at that point. For the most, listen,
And
we don't have time to get into that whole
the
mess.
whole national monuments thing is, and every single national monument is different. Some of them you can't even look at, almost like some of the ones that are designated with like as Native American like artwork and places. So some of them were like the one President Obama designated. That's like a big chunk of the ocean.
Bears Ear, that Bears Ears or Grand Staircase?
No, I'm talking about the one out by Hawaii that it's a big
Oh.
chunk of the ocean. It's open to sport fishing. Like you can go out there, you just can't go take big gill nets out there and go harvest fish, but
Okay.
you go out there and sport fish it.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
So so that one is like completely different.
Yeah.
So it's like that one's fine if you're a sports fisherman. You can go out there catch. I can't remember what's all. I'm like more familiar with like the Atlantic fishing, like blue marlin. I'm sure there's there's a whole bunch of cool fish to catch in the Pacific.
Yeah.
But if you're a sports fisherman, great. You're not competing with the commercial fishermen out in that monument.
Yeah.
But
It actually helps out people that are sport fishing.
Yeah, but some of the like Bears Ear and some of the other ones, there's a lot of restrictions on hunting. Not all of them. Like there's some places that you can't get to certain areas of where there's like the Native American. I don't know what they're called, hieroglyphics, but the cave paintings.
Well, the problem with this bill,
but it's hard to. It does some restrictions.
Yes, and that was something that I never understood why Obama. I wish if I could. This is the weirdest thing to say. The one question I'd ask Obama is, why did you designate Bears Ears and Grand Staircase? Like, I'm probably the only person that would ask him that, but like I'm genuinely curious because there was not a lot of resources being pulled from that area. He just designated it like you couldn't drive on it anymore. It made it difficult to get on. There were still hunting opportunities there, but it was much more difficult to get to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The Antiquities Act is very complicated. Like I said, basically any president can just go out and just declare this area as a national monument. There's a whole bizarre argument from the right that says, oh, well, it was only supposed to be 250 acres to begin with, and they're doing thousands of acres. If you ever hear anybody say that, sure, Obamacare was meant to be a different thing before it was passed. Every bill was meant to be a different thing before it was passed. It matters what was passed. And what was passed, there was no restrictions on how much you could designate. Okay? Mm-hmm. So they can designate whatever they want, and they can designate it for whatever reason they want. They literally will say, oh, it's pretty out here. Scenery is one of the reasons. They will designate an area like, oh, yeah, this place is pretty, so you can't go there anymore. And we can put different restrictions. So it's a very vague bill. Presidents use it all the time. Presidents love using it because they kind of like have a piece of public land that can kind of cement their legacy. Oh, Obama, you're going to have signs. Obama designated this as a national monument and this and that. And it kind of gives you a bunch of signs with your name on it, and so that people see you forever and ever and ever. There's still the national monuments from the last 130 years.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a really good bill, but I don't know. I'm back and forth on it. But they all kind of use it in a weird way. But this does the highlight. That was my point. This highlights the spot that Trump did. It also reconfirms a bunch of older ones and stuff like that. The African American Civil Rights Network Technical Corrections. I don't remember this part of the bill. The department has designated a number of historic sites. Oh yeah. It's again similar to the Antiquities Act part of the bill. Just this part, this article I pulled up, DOI.gov, because I read this bill.
Department of the Interior.
Oh yeah, of course. Managing public lands as shooting ranges. Oh, I forgot about that part too. Yeah, they opened up a lot of public lands for shooting ranges and stuff.
Oh yeah,
when that happened. I forgot about that.
Ohio's installed a lot of shooting ranges on their wildlife areas in the past few years. I don't know. It's probably got funding from this.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure it did.
Yeah. So I know we've got a new archery range down at Silver Creek.
Yeah.
That's opened within the past since this bill's been passed, and I see stuff on the Ohio Wildlife site saying that they just opened a new shooting range in one of their wildlife areas. So, I don't know if this is directly from the bill or got funding from this, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Some of them are, and like I said, it's impossible to go back and track these things and
money wise coming from the government.
They can't audit themselves. So when you try to go back and research it, it's like you can't audit it either. The people can't hold the government responsible, and this is something that really
they'll hold you
irritates
responsible for $600.
Yeah, they'll hold you responsible, but you can't hold them responsible. You can't say, "Hey, let's audit you. Where did all this money go?" We'll never know if this money was given to just a slush fund or contracts were given to people who are just connected to the politicians. That's what they all are. Trust me, we're getting involved in the political stuff, and we're staying with people that we actually like and support and that aren't doing those sorts of things. But you see it. You see how it happens. You see the little wink and nods. We started seeing some of that stuff. And like I said, we're only working with people that we like because I don't like getting involved in politics that much, but I do like certain people. So, but beside the point, that was the big bill. That it changed the public lands thinking is why I put Trump at number 2. Now, if you go back to FDR did a lot of things because we were going through, like, the economy was garbage, right?
Oh, yeah. Great Depression.
Because he got elected in 31?
Something like that.
16? Yeah, something like that. I forget. He was elected, it was like the early 30s, right?
Yeah.
I believe. I don't remember when. Oh, he's pulling it up right now. Well, he would have had to been like, what would have been the 40 or the election? 32.
Yeah, and he served 4 years. 4 terms as president.
Yeah, 4 terms, but he died at the beginning of this 4th one, right?
Yeah, that's when we got Truman.
Yeah, so that's if you type in anything FDR and public lands, it pulls up everything from for Teddy Roosevelt, not FDR. You have to scroll down to a different article, not that one. Oh. Yeah, see there. Click on that top one, the up one more, down one, that one right there. Yeah. I understand. Like every time you're listening to a podcast and you're like, oh no, you're like, how do they not see it? Like that's, I get it. But no, a couple things that not Teddy Roosevelt, FDR did. The whole top part of this, I've read this article before. You're gonna want to scroll down to get to the parts about FDR. So basically, that's all Teddy Roosevelt still, because those are all of his national monuments and all that stuff. Because that was signed under Teddy Roosevelt. 1930. Okay, so FDR. A lot of things he did were he like when people were unemployed, they employed a bunch of workers to work on public lands, helped with soil erosion. Oh yeah, seems like a fairly good idea, especially with some of the things we're starting to see now.
Oh yeah, they had the Dust Bowl, which pretty much destroyed like Oklahoma and Kansas. And all
when
that.
was the Dust Bowl?
That was during the
20s, I thought.
It was late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, so it was right around this time. So it was like it was some like Restore Public Lands Act with unemployed people or something. So like people who are unemployed, they hired to put in roads, to put in fire lanes, to do soil erosion stuff.
They built a lot. They've built a lot of dams, which now we're taking them out because we realize, they may not be as good as what we thought, but they built a lot of lakes, a lot of reservoirs.
Yes. He stocked like 1 billion fish. I want to say it was 1 billion fish. Like I
maybe even more than that.
They stocked 1 billion fish.
Oh yeah.
So a thing about fishing in this country with public lands is we depleted our resources, kind of like we did with hunting.
Yeah.
Okay. So we depleted the resource with hunting because there was no laws around it. Now, I'm a fairly libertarian guy. I don't like the government getting involved, but I believe in freedom, innocent until proven guilty. Like, we should have the freedom until we're like, hey, maybe there should be a couple of laws here. I'm a very small government person in general, but with hunting, we went in and we killed all the animals. We didn't have any left. Teddy Roosevelt, back in the 1800s, before he was president, famously went out and hunted a buffalo. And the story goes, is this, true or not, that he killed a buffalo and then had this like epiphany of like, I might have just killed the last buffalo and my kids will never see one. Now, it ended up not being quite true, but that kind of like changed his thinking. That's how the historians tell it. I kind of wonder about that, but it definitely had an impact on him somehow. And we deplete the resource, and then we found a way to fix it. We're good at adaptation. We're not good at preventing problems. Humans in general.
Oh, yeah.
All of us. For all of history, this is true.
Because we didn't realize, we've never reached a point evolutionary that we could affect our environment so much until it was like too late.
Yeah, it was like horses. A bunch of Native Americans got horses and killed all the deer, which is something that people don't like to talk about. But like they did destroy the resources.
Oh yeah, it's like the same thing with the beaver. Yeah. It's like we almost wiped out beavers, and that was back in the 1700s.
Yeah,
it's like beavers are what built North America.
You know that like out of their anal gland is what you make vanilla.
Yeah, it's
flavor?
crazy.
Yeah.
At
least they used to. I don't think they're using beaver butts to make vanilla ice cream anymore, but
yeah, yummy.
Now have you ever had vanilla bean ice cream and it's just a little bit better?
Yeah, so you know what you're eating.
Yeah, you're eating beaver butt. So Franklin D. Roosevelt, you could argue that he's the second best on public lands. You could
second best or third best?
Second or third. It's between him and Trump. FDR or Trump. But the bottom line that I'm trying to get at here is Donald Trump changed the way we think about public lands in a very positive way. And somebody who studied them for years and years and years and years, read all these bills. I thought about it, and when Trump came into office and thought win-win, I was like, oh, that's a way better way of doing things.
I wonder how much of it has to do with his sons who are hunters.
So I know that Donald Trump Jr., I listened to him on the Push podcast, it's a Tradition Archery podcast. He talked about it, and he talked about how, no, we need to be pulling resources in a very smart way, and there's a balance to this. And he talked about that a lot. And I know that Donald Trump Jr. is in his ear a lot. That's a guy I'd love to talk to. Donald Trump Jr. about public lands and hunting. That guy's like on public lands with traditional archery, killing deer. He's a legit hunter, a legit guy. And he understands public lands. He's a smart guy. I like the fact that he's in Trump's ear just from listening to him on other podcasts. Because Trump, I think he's like, yeah, public lands, look at these things. They're great. They're huge. They're awesome.
Yeah,
and that's all the thought.
They're beautiful.
He's not a hunter like us.
No.
Trump doesn't have the same, he doesn't have, like, when you're a hunter, you think about things from a hunting perspective. When you run the hunting news and when you run, the Sportsman Party, we think of things politically from a hunter's perspective. Donald Trump doesn't have that. But Donald Trump Jr. does, and he does listen to his son.
Yeah, and Trump's a businessman. He thinks from a business what's good and the win-win, and the art of the deal, and how do I make things better? How can I, make everybody happy? How can I get things,
win-win.
Yeah, the whole win-win thing.
How do you make your product better and cheaper, and like we do with DeLong? He's a businessman.
And it's like, and his son comes and is like, hey. He's worried about oil extraction and all that. It's like, hey, let's do this. People like public lands. They don't want them destroyed. And,
Actually, before you go on past that, let me make a point about that, because that's a really good, interesting point. Donald Trump Jr. is the one who went to Donald Trump and told him not to. I remember there's a spot in Alaska. It was the headwaters for like all the salmon. What was that place called?
Was it Copper Creek?
Something like that.
I think it was Copper Creek.
I was about to say like Iron River or something. No, so it's got to be something like that.
I think it's Copper Creek.
Yeah, look up Copper Creek.
I think it's Copper
Alaska.
Creek because it's like there's like a whole controversy around. Yeah, Google Copper Creek like controversy.
Yeah, while he's looking this up, I'll just say that
or Copper River.
This was started to give a little background on this. George Bush. It was started. They were trying to extract a bunch of resources from this area. It was started under Bush.
And I think it had to do with gold mining.
Yeah, it had to do with mining something.
And I'm pretty sure it was gold.
But anyways, he was looking up. Bush did nothing about it. Like there was a lot of pressure to stop it, and Bush was like, it wasn't approved, but it wasn't shot down. And then it went to Obama, when everyone's like, hey, Obama's gonna shut this thing down, and Obama was like,
people mining.
people.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So this basically this area, there's all this mining, and if anything goes wrong, you're gonna destroy these waters.
Yeah.
And you could destroy the fishery for salmon.
Yeah,
right?
it's
in Alaska, which there's like 80% of the population of salmon in the world are there. It's like a huge percentage. I forget.
Mm-hmm.
It's over half the salmon are in Alaska. But Obama didn't do anything about it. Obama just kind of pushed the can down the road. He didn't approve it. He didn't shut it down. And then with Trump going in, people made a big push like, oh, we'll get this guy. He's gonna be the one that lets us extract.
Yeah,
Donald Trump Jr. allegedly went to Donald Trump and said, hey, you can't do this. This is a bad idea. And Trump went, shut it down. It's done. And everyone's like, whoa. Because people invested a lot of money in this, just hoping that it would happen. Because these investors, there's a whole controversy around the people investing that they were corrupt. They were politically connected. They were about to. And the good thing about Trump not being in politics for so long is he didn't owe anybody anything. So he just shut it down. And these people were like, wait, what? It was like, no. This is bad. This is a bad policy to mine here. Listen, I'm all for extracting resources. I just talked about that. But it also, right here, we're pulling it up now. But also, you have to do it in a smart way. You can't just ruin half the population of salmon in North America.
Yeah.
You can't just do that. And Trump came in and was like, all right, it's done. And everyone was kind of like, wait, what? Like the left should have loved it. I don't think it was talked about very much. But, the right, people that were hunters, left and right, if you are hunting, if you are a hunter, if you're concerned about public lands, if you're concerned about those things, you like what Trump did.
Mm-hmm.
So again, another pro-Trump thing that he just did that Republican and Democrat back to back. You had 8 years of Bush, 8 years of Obama, a Republican and a Democrat didn't do anything, and then Trump came in and just shut it down. He made a good move, and I completely agree with that. Like and that's why I said a lot of these politicians wouldn't have had the stones to do that. They just wouldn't have. So with Donald Trump being able to just hop in there and say, okay, let me look at all of the decisions. Let me look at from everybody's perspective. Everybody give me your information. Tell me what you think. Oh, well, you could ruin all the salmon? Well, we're not going to do that for sure, right? Okay, it's done. And then just on to the next thing. So right there, the one that says Trump denies, admin denies permit for, that's the one. That's going to have, contrary to public interest, I remember this. Yeah. If that pulls up, then that's going to be the article we're going to want to read that's about this. Trump administration denies permit for controversial pebble mine in Alaska. All right, scroll down. The decision is a win for the indigenous, environmental, and fishing groups who argued the proposed gold and copper mine, yeah, that's right, would be detrimental to the wildlife in the region, which is home to the world's largest sockeye salmon fishery, which I believe has like half of the world's salmon. It's something crazy.
And they're delicious.
And salmon's so good.
Sockeyes really good.
The project was also opposed by President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr. Yeah, that's what I said. Fox News' Tucker Carlson said, whatever, former chief of staff and Vice President Mike Pence. What they're saying, Army Corps said it had determined that the applicant's plan for the discharge of fill material does not comply with Clean Water Act guidelines and concluded that the proposed project is contrary to the public's interest. So basically, and that's what I was trying to say, was that it was when you mine stuff, you're pulling a bunch of stuff out of the ground, right? And then you have to do something with it. And you can have spills with oil, but this wasn't for that. But there's similar things that can happen when you're mining for gold, when you're mining for copper. You have a lot of extra stuff that you're using that can get into the water supply.
Yeah,
and kill things.
like salmon, trout, and those type of fish have to have very clean, silt-free water to reproduce and to live.
Yeah.
And if you're putting silt and that sort of stuff into the water, you're just not gonna. They're not gonna be able to reproduce. They're not gonna be able to live in that water.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's. I'm not a biologist, but that's. If one of my understanding is correct, that's part of the reason.
Yeah.
Plus, there might also be chemicals and other types of, suspended solids and other types of stuff in that water that you're going to be dumping into the river.
Yeah, I know with fracking, like they'll have water that has a bunch of different chemicals in it that they shove down in the ground, and because like right by my parents' place where
they got that holding
well
tank.
They got that giant. They basically made a giant lake with this huge rubber mat, and then they just put all the water in there, and then they pump it out to the wells, and then they pump it back. If that stuff gets into groundwater, if that stuff gets into it causes a real problem.
Yeah,
and so that a lot of those things could have happened here, and Trump again did the right thing. There's nobody else really. Everybody, all the other presidents, all presidents are not typically bad on public lands because public lands are like people support public lands. It's an easy one. But I would put, if you're gonna rank presidents for public lands, you got to put Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, number one for sure. Carved his face on a mountain, and then you're gonna go with between Trump and FDR for 2 or 3. So Trump is one of the best presidents in history on public lands. Like it or not, we just went over the bills. I didn't even go over the Great American Outdoor Act, which I'll cover that real fast. It's super simple. It's like a 3-page bill. They're basically like, we're taking a bunch of money and we're spending a bunch of money on public lands. That's all it was. It was the biggest funding bill for public lands. They're funding like campsites. They're funding like all the buildings on those on the campsite, like all of the roads and stuff. And one other thing on the LWCF, I want to make this point. The reason why the LWCF, I don't think I made this point well enough at the beginning. The LWCF is so important because it's actually funded projects in every single county in the entire United States, all 50 states. Every county has at least one project. So wherever you're living, wherever you're listening to, the LWCF money has funded a project in your county.
Oh, yeah. Some of them are maybe as simple as a county park.
Yeah. Like ball fields even. Like it could be ball fields or it could be parks.
Yeah, and a lot of times if you go to a lot of the parks and the hiking trails, if you go up there and you see there's usually a little like stand, a little kiosk at the front of your hiking trails. You go up there and look at it and you'll see in like the small print or something at the corner it'll say, this park is funded by money from the LWCF. A lot of times they will say that on there, or they'll say, some of it from the Pittman-Robertson Act, or they'll say, a lot of times they'll say where the money came from to fund that park. So look, next time you go to one of your public parks, go
back up, Corey.
Go look, find out
Go
find out where the money came from. Go find that funded your public park. Like if you go to a hiking trail, just look, just do that for a second. Just go find out where the money came from. Just go find out where your park came from and where some of it may surprise you. Like there's a couple parks that we go hunting came from the Pheasants Forever.
Yeah.
We're allowed to hunt in those parks. It's great. It's little secret places that we go.
Don't give up too much.
We're not telling the names of them.
Yeah, we kill a lot of rabbits there.
Yeah, a lot of rabbits there, but go look at your park and find out who paid for them. A lot of times you'd be like, oh, public lands paid for my park where I go walk my dog, or where my kids play baseball.
Yeah,
and be like, oh, this is a good thing.
But more than Trump's accomplishments on it, it was the reframing of how to do it. That was the big thing for me. Forget the money. He spent billions and billions of dollars on public lands. Okay, good. So did FDR. But it was the reframing of how we think, no, we can pull from these resources, and then we just got to put the money back in. Like that's what gives it to me. Now, I do want to bring up one more thing because people do have this idea that Barack Obama was great on national on public lands. I think that he was okay. Corey just pulled up an article that kind of went over a lot of different people. So I'm going to read part of this. The president who protected the most national monuments. Now, we went over the national monuments, which a national monument is through the Antiquities Act. You designate things as national monuments. Now, he designated a lot of national monuments that didn't make sense to me, which I already talked about. Right here, it says Utah's Bears Ears National Monument, which I talked about, to expanding Pacific Remote Island Marine National Monument. That might be the one.
That's what I was talking about out by Hawaii, which is huge, which gives you which adds a lot to the acres of land and water.
Obama designated more monuments than any other predecessor, using the Antiquities Act to protect 550 million acres of land and water under federal protection. Again, I don't necessarily agree with that being a good thing. We've talked about that though. Obama designated Stonewall National Monument in 2016, which was the first monument that honored the LGBTQ movement. I don't really think that's I mean,
Yeah, that's in
Really?
that's in Wall Street. That's like I think that's is it in Wall Street? Like up in New York?
I don't care. Like,
Yeah, I don't
why
know.
are you honoring LGBTQ with national monuments, like to protect public lands? That seems silly to me.
Well, it's because you could do more than just for
That's
public
true.
lands than just it's like a
Yes,
national monument.
you know.
You could designate a
know.
house. He could designate the house that you grew up in as a national monument.
Yeah.
He could Trump's probably going to nominate that field he got shot in.
Yeah. I support it.
This is where I lost my ear. It's huge. Much blood, much bleeding.
During his presidency, Obama went on an array of adventures like fly fishing in Montana, hiking, kayaking, and walking on glaciers. Oh, so he went on some walks?
Yeah, he went hiking.
Yeah. I feel like they're trying to make him sound really good right now. He designated a lot of land. I don't know.
A lot of water. He donated a lot of water.
Yeah, a lot of water.
If you look at
Yeah.
the water is probably 75% of it. It's a
Yes.
huge bunch of water.
Yeah. Okay. Now, because I want to give other people, because this was pulled up about what everybody did with public lands. Jimmy Carter, he also did some good things. 17 national monuments in Alaska, protecting 56 million acres of land from mineral extraction. Again, like I said, just designating, like a lot of the things, how people perceive the presidents is like, how much land did you designate and you protected it? Well, just making it a national monument doesn't necessarily protect it. Yes, you're going to add some regulations. I'm not actually completely opposed to that, but it's not getting to the core of, we also have to balance it. Trump came in and said, we're going to extract and then fund, which is the right decision. But all the presidents before him were just like, I'll put my name on this one. I'll put my name on this one. We'll protect it. We want clean air. We want clean water. Yeah, that was a problem in the past, and that was a good thing to do. But now, with how much better we are at extraction, we're much better at getting oil out of the ground now than we used to be. Much more efficient. There's a lot less problems over time. Lyndon B. Johnson, I don't remember much of what he did. I know he designated. Yeah, again, this is just designating. He signed the Wilderness Act into law. I don't exactly high level federal
No.
protection.
No. You like
Yeah.
you some Johnson.
Yeah. Did he establish the BLM?
No, BLM should be. It was.
Was that
That was
was
long
Teddy
before
Roosevelt?
that.
Wasn't it? I can't. I'm getting him. I'm starting to get a couple things confused here. The Land and Water Conservation Act. Yeah. That's right. That's what I was talking about. The LWCF.
Yeah.
The Land and Water. That's right. Lyndon B. Johnson was. Yeah, that's what I said. In the '60s, he did do that. So that was, again, he's up there. Johnson is up there because of that act alone. That's the most important public lands bill I think that we have. I think it's more important than the Antiquities Act. It's the most important bill in my opinion. Obviously, Teddy Roosevelt signed the Antiquities Act. He designated, or he set up. He didn't just protect certain public lands.
Oh, yeah.
He got the public land system in general. 230 million acres.
Oh yeah, and started like the national parks,
150 national forests.
national forest,
51
yeah.
federal bird reserve. But that dude was like a bird nerd. He was he's like this super, like Teddy Roosevelt was a super giant, like this bigger than life, tough guy, the Rough Riders, he was like known as, like, everybody loved him. And he was like this bird nerd he was an ornithologist. He'd go out and just like study birds. He used to go out and just like shoot birds and then stuff them and have them in his hotel, in his room when he was going to Harvard. He would have these like dead birds everywhere, and he would he'd like go and like designate them. He'd like give them names and stuff, and because that back during those days
So
when they're
was he
giving
the one that
scientific
like
names.
named it like the Great Tit and the
I wonder. I hope so. I'd like
yeah.
him even more if he did.
like this is the blue-footed booby.
We'll do a whole podcast on Teddy Roosevelt and how the Roosevelt elk came to be. I think that's an interesting one.
Oh, yeah.
Where they just basically, like, I think it was John Burgernell was like, hey, I want to designate more. I want to name more animals. So he tried to say this elk. He's like, this is the most big and majestic and beautiful elk. And I've named it the Roosevelt elk. And then Teddy Roosevelt was like, all right, man, you can do what you want. He was like, I like it. It was kind of a Trumpian move if you think about it. Like, he really just stroked his ego and got what he wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm not going to lie. If you named it like the Steven Ziegler
Worm.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, muskrat is a new form of muskrat. No,
Like,
you'd name something dumb after me.
like, oh look, it's gay.
We found a species that mates with its own sex, and
Yeah, and, you know.
worms.
Oh yeah, asexual
They're
reproduction.
asexual. Yep. Thanks. The dung beetle.
Oh yeah, it's the Steven.
But anyways, we'll do a whole thing on Teddy Roosevelt in the future. But anyways, anything you'd like to add about the public lands thing with Donald Trump in politics?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. It's
I think so too.
And the way things are looking, we may have more to add in the next administration.
Yeah. Biden didn't do much public land wise. There's been a couple of little things here and there, but it's just basic.
Truthfully, it doesn't come up that often, unless.
If you go Google public lands and Biden, it just gives his record on what he voted for as a senator, pretty much.
Yeah,
there's not a lot going on.
I'd say it didn't come up much in the Bush administration. It came up a little bit in Obama.
Yeah.
It came up in Trump. So that's 2 administrations in a row. Which, if you look at the records of the presidents, that we just came over, it's really quite rare for 2 administrations in a row to have somewhat major contributions like Obama and Trump, one after another.
Yeah.
With him designating, all those monuments and then followed by Trump with major bills. So for major acts to come up one after another. So who knows what, Trump's going to do in the next administration if he gets elected, as the way it looks, the way the polling's going and,
Yeah, it seems like he's going
it
to win.
seems
that
like
picture of him with the blood and pumping his fist.
Yeah,
and
it's
Biden not really being there.
Yeah,
not being able to talk very well. It seems like he's going to win. So hopefully look, Trump. I'm a big fan of Trump for what he did on public lands from a hunting perspective, opening up lands, making the laws what they should be, funding the lands, getting the resources, helping the economy, helping the public lands. I'm a fan of what he did on public lands. A fan of what he did for hunting. I think if he's elected from a hunter's perspective, we're all going to be pretty happy. I think. So, but anyways, that's the podcast. Thanks for listening. Follow us on the Hunting News on Facebook. The Sportsman Party we brought up. We don't normally talk about it, but we do talk politics stuff on there. So if you're on there and you've seen us talk about politics, we pretty much just talk about politics as it relates to public lands.
Yeah,
or hunting.
Or hunting. And
like hunting, fishing, we talk about. But politics is part of hunting, like it or not. A lot of people don't like to talk about it. But if we don't talk about it, it's just gonna nobody's gonna take
the anti-hunters will.
Yeah, so we got to talk about it. So follow us next week, and we'll have another podcast next week. Hopefully this time we'll actually be able to talk about the subspecies of deer. I've been studying that one for a while, but it's super hard to really nail down the facts. So we'll talk about that hopefully next week, and we'll see you guys then. Thanks.